Welcome to Sheikhy Sports Journeys. I've decided to venture back in to the sport that is played with the egg-shaped ball. Something I've always struggled with. I think these guys are very, very, very talented to play the sport they do. And I'm joined today by former Auckland, former All Blacks, former Edinburgh rugby player Ben Atiga. How you doing, mate?
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for having me on the show, cousin.
Yeah, good to have you, mate. Good to have you. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey through your life and career to date, and we'll see what it takes us. So you were born 5th of May 1983 in Auckland. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, your family, etc.
Yep, so born and bred. I'm a city boy, born in Auckland, and I grew up in an area called Ponsonby. It's not far from Sky City, not far from the Sky Tower there. So right in the city there. Grew up in the lights, the noise, and it was a good childhood. You know, I grew up. I have an older brother and two younger sisters. We grew up in a big, massive household. Pacific Islanders we like to all live under one roof. We at times we'd have anywhere from 8 to 10 people in the house. Aunties, uncles, cousins. The house that I grew up in was my mother's parents, my grandparents. So they've traditionally we always live with our grandparents all the way through to their time comes. So it was a great childhood. We have a great neighborhood, both our neighbors, and we'd always get together, all the kids, and get out in the backyard and play a bit of rugby, pass the ball around every day. I guess it's that 10,000 hours of honing in on your skills there. We have small backyards and small front yards, and we stayed next to a high school. So obviously we had access to the field right there on our doorstep. But we seem to have spent more time in our yard in a smaller confined space playing, because we're just too lazy to kind of use all the space out there. So you're really kind of honing on your skills, around your evasion and passing and all sorts. So it was always a nice community feeling. We have these Americans that grew up to next door, and they migrated to New Zealand the same time that my grandparents had back in the 60s, I think, the 50s or the 60s, and so they've become my second parents. And they're both professors, and they've grown up with their kids as well. But to us, it was there were no gates between our houses. We would just wander over and eat what they're eating, and grab eggs and onions and things that we needed. And it was always a kind of community feeling there. So I'm very, very fortunate to have grown up in such a childhood like that. But it was always fueled with rugby. We grew up next door to a very famous rugby family, rich in rugby history, and that's the Stanleys. Joe Stanley was an All Black World Cup winner back in '87, and he was a legend of the game. And I grew up with his nephews who grew up next door, with Winston and Benson, who both ended up in professional players. Benson became an All Black as well. And also Joe's son Jeremy as well. So it was a very I guess rugby mad kind of community and neighborhood. And I guess it was just written in the stars that we were all going to be playing rugby in some form or another, or be involved in the game. Yes,
it's amazing to listen to. It's like you were destined for it, because it was you must have been, the fact that the two boys you were discussing there, the Stanleys, they would have been talented rugby players as well. So, you would all be competing. You had it pretty much. Sometimes people need to venture out to go and find, somebody to play with or to play at a good standard. But you had it all through your childhood. I like the whole going in and out of the neighbours' houses. That shows how much there was a close-knit community. Very similar as well, your culture. to Pakistanis. You know,
Yeah.
grandparents tend to stay
Yeah.
with the children as they grow up, and you know, until the time comes. So it's very, very, very similar, very close knit family. Really nice to hear. So rugby was destined to happen. When did you start realizing you were quite good at it?
I guess probably around high school. You know, when I kind of found I was playing in the high levels of each of the grades there at high school, and I guess coming through the age grades at the time as well. I was very fortunate to be making the age grades consecutively through the years during my high school years. And I don't know. I guess when I was doing that consecutively, I kind of thought, well, like, this is obviously I'm you know, one of the top players in the country coming through in my age grade. As long as I maintain that, I should be, you know, I should end up somewhere in the pro leagues at some stage once I finish school. So that was just kind of my thought at the time. But you know, it was, if anything, it was a very faint thought. I just enjoyed playing the game.
Yep.
Just playing with my mates. That was what it was really all about. Any other accolades that came with it was just, you know, that's the bonus. Obviously, everyone wants to win, but you know, it's the other parts outside of the field that you enjoy, and that's been around your classmates at the time, and you know, your brothers, you know, and your family. Those were the really kind of things I look back, and those were the parts that I really cherish. We had some great wins at high school. Those are the ones that you remember. But you know, I guess for me it was really probably towards the end of that last year at high school where I kind of realized I could do something with this as a career. But I was very aware at the time as well that it wasn't everything. It was around the late 90s, and I guess there were a couple of players who were just coming into retirement from those first few years of pro rugby, and you know, there were stories of them coming back, you know, where they were really struggling, I guess, mentally after the game, really struggling personally around their, I guess, just trying to find that identity out of rugby. You know, so I was aware that I had to have something to fall back on, but you know, it wasn't as, I guess, as prominent as it is now, as it's really pushed as it is these days, 20 years on. So, yeah, it was probably around that time I realized I wanted to play, you know, as a profession. So
you went to, I mean, Auckland Grammar School, pretty decent school from reading up on it. You were actually the 50th pupil to represent the All Blacks that came out of that school. That's some pretty impressive stats.
Yeah, it is a traditional rugby school. You know, very rich in rugby history. It was a great school to attend. I was, you know, again, just very fortunate to have received a scholarship to attend there. And my brother was there at the time as well, and a couple of us, some of the Stanley boys who we'd grown up with as well, were there. Were there previously. You know, that was Martin Stanley and a couple of them there, and Jeremy. And it was funny. It's funny because our parents, our fathers went to another school called Mount Albert Grammar, and us kids decided to just go against the grain and really kind of take the mickey out of the parents and attend Auckland Grammar. So
is it a rivalry? Is it a rivalry between?
There's a rivalry in the household, you know. So you know, and now it's our kids who are coming through and deciding which school they'll go to. But you know, so our generation ended up going to Auckland Grammar, but and obviously I just kind of followed in my brother's footsteps as well, and some of the Stanley boys. Just wanted to be a part of that little group there, you know, because obviously we'd grown up together.
Yep.
And you know, it wasn't until I kind of got there where I realized the prestige of kind of being able to attend that school and all the support there, and I guess the resources there, not just in school, but obviously not just in education, but obviously in rugby as well. And you know, I think I was actually well aware of how I could use this to help me kind of develop my rugby. And so, you know, I got stuck into it for my very first year. Just wanted to play the best I could. And ended up in our first 15 squad in my fourth form year, which is our second year at high school. And so I was a 14-year-old kid playing amongst 17, 18-year-olds. So it was a huge learning curve that year. I was just getting battered around all over the place. But it was a great experience to just kind of get a taste of fresh 15 rugby. At the time, and I obviously had spent the rest of my years there playing at Fresh 15 Rugby. But it's such a huge passion for rugby at that school. The whole school gets in behind. There's 2,500 boys there. Then at the time, and you have around about 800 of them who are at the Tibbs house there, the hostel boys, the guys there. So they're there at the games, and they're performing the haka right across the field there. It's just such an intense time. Some of those games, but it's just a great spectacle, a great event to be a part of. So you kind of you put everything into it.
Such a young age as well to get that kind of atmosphere and. Hype about the sport. I mean, I remember playing school football, and you were lucky if you got 3 or 4 people that came to have a watch of the game after school. But that sounds like it was a real passionate family, all of you together, all of you wanting to win, rivalries against other schools. So what happened when you played the other schools? What was your parents?
It's funny because it seemed to be that everyone seemed to be playing in teams that everyone wanted to beat. It seemed like that's from the very beginning. So I ended up at Auckland Grammar School, and it was just the team that everyone hated or everyone wanted to beat.
It's probably because you won a lot. It's just probably success. People see you, they want to knock you off.
I guess the history of it, they're quite a successful team at the time, and and obviously being such a prestigious school, all the resources, kind of looked at as they get everything, and we get nothing. So let's take on the big dogs. So it seemed to be every week it was just, there was a great, there was always a chip on the shoulder from other teams. So you always felt you had to kind of win or perform well. That was the same at club rugby. I played at Ponsonby as well. And that was, everyone always likes to get one over Ponsonby as well. That makes the team's year for some reason. And then obviously going into Auckland, it's the same thing. Everyone always just raises their game level when they come up against Auckland. So it always, and then obviously with playing for New Zealand, same thing. So you always seem to be this in the team that
all the way through your school. So talk to me about, when did you actually make your way into the Auckland setup?
That was in 2002. It was just a year out of high school, and that came on really, really quickly. I was just studying at the time. I was at Auckland Uni. It was mum that was always really hard on the education side. She was a careers advisor. She just retired. And dad would just be kicking balls back and just making sure like you do whatever you want as long as you're happy, kind of thing. So you had the best of both worlds. But I was locked in to do a BCom at Auckland Uni at the time, and it was just the first semester, and I was playing, they had 2 divisions there. So, sorry, they had like you had your A team and your A-level professional side, and then you have a B team. And I was playing in the B team. I was basically just benching on the B team because I was hardly at trainings. I was at classes. So ended up on the bench for the B team one weekend. And over the span of that weekend, come into Tuesday, I think Monday or Tuesday, I got a call from Graham Henry, who's an All Blacks coach, who ended up coaching at Auckland at the time. Got a call from Graham, and he asked if I wanted to come down and train with the A team, and I thought, yeah, that's fine, I'll come down. So, cut the class, ended up, had my boots in the car and just trotted on down to Eden Park, and then turned up, and it was just a massive media crew there, and it was all of a sudden it was like, oh, like Ted was like, you're gonna be, you potentially gonna be playing this week for the A's, and I was like, geez, like, and I was playing fullback as a fullback at the time, so I was playing number 15 at the back, and I ended up having to play in the midfield, which I hadn't played for. Well, I only had a couple of games like that throughout my career at the time. So it was really, really fast. So, you know, Tuesday I was down there and throwing a ball around, and you know, you had all these All Blacks around you, and these guys that I basically was watching the games in the terraces, watching these guys and painting
Only
their face.
only a couple of weeks before or months before you didn't watch.
Yeah, just a week or two before, I was in the terraces with my mates, face painted, because you had free access to the terraces if you painted your full painted face. Here I am, like, you know, supporting the Auckland team at the time, and 2 weeks later, running out on the Friday night lights there, you know, with you know, your heroes. So it was just a surreal feeling.
Must have been a great
Just,
moment for your family and your friends. And
oh
stuff,
yeah, you know.
for them to see you take the pitch.
Oh yeah, yeah. My family were obviously really, really proud. It had come a little bit earlier than I had expected. That I had really kind of targeted as a player. I thought, you know, get my studies done and keep my foot in the game, and just, you know, and then, you know, invest time into it later. But it just so happened with injuries, etc. In that circumstance at that time, just the stars, I guess, seemed to all align and tell me, no, you're going in this week. So that was it. It just happened really, really fast, and it went from a couple of games, you know, here and there, to fully immersed within the pro environment, and that was it. I had to kind of start pulling back on some studies, and I had to drop a couple of papers. I actually had to sit my exams over in Oxford, funny enough, because at that time of the year, we had our New Zealand under-21s team. We played the World Cup down there, down in Oxford. And there was a couple of us players. There was another couple of All Blacks, Tamati Allison and Tom Wardrum, actually, who ended up playing at Exeter here in the Premiership. And we had Stephen Donald, Stephen Donald as well. We had to sit our exams up here in the hotel rooms, and our manager had to oversee it, which was funny. And it was just a funny experience right in the middle of a World Cup.
Yeah,
we were sitting exams and studying for exams, which we passed in the end.
Good to hear.
But, you know,
good to hear.
Good enough. You know, it was really funny. Yeah, you know, it was funny that I was still studying, and then all of a sudden you're playing top level rugby, and yeah, it was just like I said, it happened really, really fast. You know, I was playing. You know, we had our New Zealand schools tour in January of 2002. We toured here in the UK. We toured the UK and France. That was our schools team. And then by the end of the year, I played pro rugby, you know, and we'd won the championship, you know, as well, which was just, you know, it's every kid's dream. Yeah. So it was called the NPC back then. It was the national domestic competition there. And it was just like, you know, it was you see your heroes every year, like playing for that trophy. And here I was hoisting it up. And I was the youngest in the team, so I was in charge of holding it. Yeah. We played down in Hamilton, which is roughly around just past, say, Hoyk. And so, you know, I'd have to hold it the whole way up on the bus, you know, and obviously everyone is celebrating. I wasn't allowed to leave it, and like, you know, having to go to the bathroom. Had to hold it. If you see this trophy, it is. Yeah. It is like
same size as the top half of you.
Yeah, it was like half of me. It was like 20 kilos, and trying to stand there with the buses, you know, trying to take a leak. It wasn't easy feat, but you know, it was just like I said, that whole year just happened really fast. You know, from one end to the other end of the spectrum. You know, it was exciting. You know, like I was living my dream. Yeah. You know, and it just increased even more from there. It just skyrocketed from there.
You had a very successful kind of junior. I mean, you went into Auckland set up at a very young age, as you've said. It sounds like you kind of adjusted pretty quickly, but you also got a lot of recognition in kind of junior rugby as well, as in I would call like your 19s, your 23s. You won 2 world titles, I believe, with the 19s, 2001 and 2003, I believe. You also played the under-23 and won the World Cup, and you captained the 23s as well in 2004, I believe. So that must have been all of those, you know, World Cup experiences, you know, leadership as well. Must have been a great progression for you to, you know, set you up for more pro rugby.
Yeah, it was. Looking back now and looking back at the years there, and I said there were some years I almost forgot about. Where I kind of like found, saw an old photo from an old teammate who posted up on Facebook, and I'm like, geez, I forgot that we'd gone there, or forgot about, totally kind of forgot about that year.
Yeah.
To kind of go back into the archives, and there was just some really great teams to be a part of. And like I said, I was just really, really lucky. I was just enjoying playing rugby with my mates. Anything that was coming on top of that was coming, was a bonus. But yeah, like I said, that's when I started to realize that like I could do something, as a career. I could potentially play pro rugby if I was good enough.
Mhm.
And as long as I was obviously playing at the higher end of each grade, then I knew I was sitting right, and just as long as I kept my head down, I could do something, So that's where the realization of the dream to play pro rugby came, was around those age grades. And it just so happened, like I said, like how fast it was to go from high school and then into pro rugby, and then to go from in pro rugby and go into the All Blacks. I was still playing age grade at the time, so
Wow.
the year after I played at the World Cup, I was still playing in the under-21s the very next year. That was the year that I captained. We actually played here in Scotland, over in Glasgow, and we won it here. So, and at the time then we had a couple of players, 2 or 3 players who had also played Super Rugby, or played Pro Rugby at the time, and then who also had, their careers from that year onwards had just skyrocketed into the All Blacks the very next year. And the rest is history. Some of them become Rugby World Cup winners. So, we had some really good, I guess, the development, the system there at the time was really good. The players, obviously, the depth that we have in New Zealand is just incredible, and I guess
for such a small country as well. I mean, it's phenomenal cricket and rugby.
Yeah, someone showed me a team list. Someone sent me a team list, sent it to my wife, and then she sent it to me. And I looked at the list there and then started counting through. And I think it was about in the final that we played down in Oxford, there was around about 17 guys who had played 17 to 18 in that 20 squad of 21 that they had played pro rugby, and I think it was around 12 guys played for the All Blacks.
Wow.
So and at the time that same year, we were without two guys who were already in the All Blacks, 3 guys who were already in the All Blacks at the time. All of them which came up as World Cup winners as well. It was Dan Carter, Ma'anonu, and Joe Rokocoko, just absolutely the best, the greatest players within their positions. So the depth was there, and I guess because of that, you kind of really rise to the occasion through those age grades. And I guess that's why we've had such success, not just at age grade, but obviously going into pro level as well. It's just knowing that you can be replaced, is enough to just keep your head down, So, so as I said, like, it was really lucky to be playing in those national squads as a kid, really.
Yep.
But it was definitely the taster, to better things, to greater things. And yeah, I look back now and just some incredible memories. And like I said, it wasn't really, obviously the results were great. It's great to win a World Cup, to be a world champion. But, it was just everything else, right? It was just hanging around in the hotel with the boys. It was, we stayed at the Dalmahoy here in Scotland last year, and they had a golf course right there. It sits on a golf course. So here we are every day. We get into our mini teams and we're playing these putt challenges, these chip challenges, all, dressed up and, like ridiculous outfits, with paying customers, obviously, high income earners over here, and it just didn't look right, but just had the time of our lives, and there were so many great memories off the field that I remember. The tours that we had here to the UK, I was lucky enough to, before I finished school, I'd already toured the UK twice, in France, been to Dubai, when I was like 14, I traveled to Dubai in '98 before it became the big city that it is. To be able to go to the US and travel to some of these places, travel around the world, ended up in Italy, in 2002, and our last year, the year just out of high school. Just being able to do that much traveling, just and see the world and kind of get that experience. It's something that you just can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, when you look back at your memories and where you've been able to travel. My actually under 19 World Cup was in New Zealand, so I played in Dunedin, and I look back sometimes and just pinch myself and just think I was 16 years old over in New Zealand, just unbelievable life. So for you to be over, and I was enjoying the warm weather. You boys would have been struggling a little bit with the temperature when you landed in Scotland.
Oh mate, it was funny to see snow for the first time. Just trickling down. We ended up in Jedburgh, just in the outskirts of the city, and it just was like, wow, this is cool. We had to stop the bus and get out and take photos because it's like guys are freaking out. Some of us have never seen snow before.
This all leads, amazing upbringing you've had with the sport, great background, but it all leads to then the big dream of pulling on the black All Blacks top and performing the haka, which we all love worldwide. It brings such an energy to the game. But it all leads to around 2003, I believe. You got called in to a World Cup test, I believe it was, because it was an injury. And you got called in to play what turned out to be your only test, but you got to play for the All Blacks. Tell me about the events leading up to that.
Again, it was similar to my first game playing in pro rugby. It was at the time it was funny because obviously all of your All Blacks and the All Blacks year are overseas, so you're left with just your core group in each of those pro teams there. So at Auckland, we were just left with, and I think there was must have been 10 or 12 guys who ended up over there, and they were obviously our senior players, our top players at Auckland. And so all that was left was just us younger guys, and that was my second year in pro rugby. I was 20 years old then at the time, going into that year, and it felt really funny because it felt like an age grade team again, because everyone had gone and you were left with just us guys who had actually come through together through the age grades, or the majority of us anyway. And I remember a conversation earlier that season, in the pre-season, and Graham Henry had called myself and another player, Sam Tuitupo, who also became an All Black a couple of years later. He called us into the room, and we were just young kids, but he'd already played a couple of seasons as well. So he was another who kind of rose really quickly through the ranks, and got called in by Graham. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "You guys are going to have to mature quickly," and it just kind of just hit me in the face that, like, geez, we are kind of some of the leaders in the team that will have to, kind of set an example for the guys, for the new guys that are coming in. But the great thing is we had some really good players who, in our age grade, who were really willing to take that step and lead. Had some really good players, Angus McDonald and Daniel Braid, and a lot of these guys who were leaders within our age grade teams, who kind of took that charge and took it upon themselves to lead. And then we had a couple of senior players also who were there at the time, great leaders. And we just had a really good mix then. But it was really good to play that season because all the other teams were without their top players as well. So it was almost, like I said, like playing the age grade again and playing against each other. But, it was, I guess, it felt like we were playing some really good expressive rugby, because really it was not much pressure, to kind of play the level that we were playing at, because a lot of those guys were playing over at the World Cup. So, really just enjoyed it. And I guess through that enjoyment, that's kind of where I started to, I guess, open up in my own game, as opposed to the season before. And I guess that's what the selectors realized. At the time, I was playing in multiple positions, so I guess that was another, attractiveness to the selection process as well, that I could fill in for different positions. And then it just so happened that a couple of guys had gone down over in Melbourne, over in Australia there, and so again, it happened really quickly. We played 1 week. We played for it's a trophy in New Zealand called the Ranfurly Shield. It's a very it's a very historical shield that it kind of any level, any division can actually play for. You got to play someone at their home to and beat them to take it off them. So it can go from any level of rugby. It can go from pro level to the second, third divisions, and they could hold on to it for years. And so we were able to win it 1 week, and the very next week we were playing in the semi-final, and I got a call from the head coach at the dinner table. He's asked if he could have a word with me, and all the boys were like, "Oh, he's in trouble." I was like, "Man, what did I do? I'm sure I've done nothing wrong." It's like, so obviously he pulled me over and pulled me into the corridor, and he was like, keen to play for the All Blacks. Just really kind of, it was Wayne Pivac at the time. He's actually the coach of the Welsh national team at the moment. So yeah, Pivac called me. Because you want to play for the All Blacks? I was like, what? He was like, you want to play? I was like, no, I thought he was having me on. So he said, look, Thorpe, the manager at the time, he said he's on the line, he wants to talk to us. I said, nah, you're joking. And because he's got a smirk, because Pivac's a bit of a character, so you don't know if he's joking or not, and so he gave me the phone, talking to a guy on the other end. I've been to the All Blacks here, we need you to come over, tomorrow or as soon as you can. Are you able to get on a flight? And I just thought, I'm looking at Pivac and I'm like, no, this can't be right. And I just kind of went with it, and then he's like, great, okay, well, hand me back to Pivac, and I handed it back to him, and then obviously he's on the phone still, so I'm thinking,
this is real.
This is real. This is happening. My heart just started to really beat fast, and then Pivac said, look, let's just go back into the dinner room, and you can mention it to the boys if you want, otherwise just kind of we'll just keep it quiet. But then by the time we got in, I just kind of was sitting there and I couldn't eat. And Sammy Tutupo, my mate, was sitting there, he's like, what's going on? And I said, no, I don't know. It was just like, I was just dumbfounded for words. I was like, couldn't believe what was happening. And then eventually they got it out of me. And that was it. Boys were just kind of over the great thing is the whole team were over the moon for me as well, because we'd grown so close together. That was the group that had to kind of really bond. And that was it. I was on a flight the very next morning back up to Auckland to pack my bags, and then over to Melbourne to join the team over there. So it just happened so quickly. Like, I was playing with my mates one week, and then the very next week, we're watching the game. We're watching the All Blacks.
Big stage. You're on the biggest of big.
Yeah, you're on the world stage.
Semi-final. It was a semi-final you got called into.
No, it was the last round robin game, I think it was, and it was against Tonga. But even then, getting called in, I was just like, it was funny because I'd walked into the hotel and all the Auckland players who were there were just over the moon because we'd beaten one of the top sides, Canterbury, down there for
they
that Shield game, so they were like stoked, So I felt, great, at least I've got the boys here. I'd got there. It was like Sunday, I think it was Sunday afternoon, and it was just kind of like, getting to training and just putting on, new pair of boots that I couldn't fit, and just trying to chug around and follow direction and trying to contribute as well as much as you can. You don't want to kind of just stand there like a sore thumb and do nothing.
Is it quite a welcoming environment going into the All Black squad? Was it? Did you feel comfortable? They made you feel welcome?
Yeah, it was. Obviously everyone is just coming back from, I think they were recovering. They're getting massages and doing pool sessions and things. So they're coming in drips and drabs, but they're all coming along and shaking my hand, and they're, introducing themselves. Obviously who everyone is, and kind of introducing yourself, so it was real funny. You have guys like obviously Rich and McCaw, and at the time you had the guys like Carlos Spencer and big Brad Thorne, who were just big personalities in the squad, big people, but they were all really nice, really down to earth, and you kind of felt at ease after that. But it was just great to be obviously in that environment and learn a lot of learnings from it. But within a couple of days, I'm holding bags and just trying to learn what the moves are and get next to the coach as much as you can, and around the playmakers. And then, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, and they named me the team. And you're kind of just sitting there, in the circle, and they're just posting up the faces that are starting. Yep. They're getting all the way, and they got to like 22, I think, 22, and bang, my face popped up there. Wow. It was like, geez, what's going on? And all the boys, the boys just nudging you.
Yeah.
So I was sitting next to a couple of, the young, like Dan Carter and Ma'anonu and Joe Rokafeka. Those are my close mates. We'd come through the gauge grades, and they were kind of just like nudging me, and I just was like, what's going on here? Where the cameras, man? Like, honestly, man, I'm getting punked here somewhere, So, and that was that. Like, we ended up all going off to the cinemas that night, but just the whole time, just sitting there, I wasn't even watching. I can't even remember what we were watching. I just remember like not being there. I wasn't there, I hadn't even called home yet. I hadn't called mum and dad. I didn't really know what to say. Really, it was hard enough to tell dad that I'd made the All Blacks to start with, but. Again, like, it was that quick. I got off the plane on the Sunday, and then I was sitting on the bench on the Saturday in Brisbane, and there's like 60,000 people all there to watch the game, and you kind of just trying to take it in, but at the same time you're trying to make sure that you're switched on, and obviously as the game went on, you're kind of just. You're building up a lot of tension and a lot of anxiety at the same time. And you're seeing guys go down, and you're thinking, oh, geez, they might call me. I might be going up, and they get back up, and they carry on. You're kind of like, oh, shoot, lucky, thank goodness. I don't want to go on the field anymore, which is funny, And then it was funny. It was only towards the very end, the last couple of minutes of the game, and I thought, oh, geez, I might not actually get on. I actually want to get on now. So
yeah.
And it was funny. They scored a try, and then they called my name, and that was it. I was like, I was just stripped down real quick. I was just ready to, because I'd warmed up how many times, and you kind of like, just stay warm. And then finally, when my name got called, and Mata was sitting right next to me, he was like really cheering me on. And I ended up going on the field with him at the time, and it was just, again, I went onto the field, and it was just a blur. You're trying to hear the guys. On the pitch, and it's quite loud, and you're just thinking, oh man, don't screw up. But mind you, we'd already put 90 points on Tonga at the time, so I was kind of like, okay, we're okay at least. Yeah. But at least don't screw up, anything. Don't give away any consolation tries. And that was it. I scooped up a ball. You touched the ball, they chipped it free, I scooped it up, and ended up running straight into two big Tongan boys, and the ball just popped popped out, and it was a scrum, and I think that was pretty much the end of the game. But it was just a surreal experience. I couldn't believe I was there. But again, it was only 5 minutes. I only played 5 minutes of the game, and that was my international career. And obviously, I was trying to obviously get back there, throughout the years, but. I look back now, and I'd never replace that. I've never, never regret it. I'm so glad that I was able to get that opportunity, and so thankful to those who made that possible. And obviously not just the selectors and the coaches. It was the people that were on that journey all the way along. The people that would, from dad who would be up there and kicking balls back to me in the evening, without having to go back inside out on the field. To all those, the coaches and staff and teammates who made it possible. I realized it wasn't me that had made that team. It was collective, that had kind of helped me through that journey. So it was just great to be able to realize the dream at the time. But yeah, that's as far as that international career went, unfortunately.
I mean, the fact, look, anybody that we're talking about one of the strongest squads in world rugby. So I mean, to get there shows how well you did in your journey. You went on to you won 3 national titles in total with Auckland. You had you amazing junior career, as we touched on. You've got all the way to playing for the All Blacks of the World Cup, and around kind of 2008, you decided to take a break completely from rugby. It's public knowledge that you were struggling with your mental health, depression, anxiety. Please tell me a little bit about that time and what led to those events.
Yeah, it was. I think the previous season had been quite an extensive season. Ended up, you play two competitions. You play the domestic competition, and then you play the Super Rugby competition, which takes up the majority of the year. And then it clicks over that domestic competition again. It starts up again towards the end of the year. At the end of the Super Rugby competition, I ended up having to go into the New Zealand Sevens team and finish off what was the World Circuit at the time. So it was, and the Super Rugby season, I think it was one of the first years that extended the competition to 2 extra teams. So it was obviously an extended season, and we'd made it all the way to the semi-final, so we were still playing, and it was we'd actually spent about 5 weeks overseas, and at the very end of the season, we ended up in South Africa for about 2 or 3 weeks, then flew back to Perth to play a game there, only to wake up and find out that we had to fly back to South Africa to play a semi-final. So we went all the way back, and I just remember, I think we'd all had enough of each other.
Yeah.
2 weeks is long enough on tour, right? So you're going to go 4 or 5 weeks. I think everyone was quite short with each other at the time, and it was quite intense. And we went all the way back, and it was funny, we were in the semi-final. We hadn't been in the semi-final for a few years. We'd kind of been in a drought at the Blues at the time. And so we went back, and I remember Kevin Mealamu, one of our leaders in the squad, brought the team together and said, look, I know it's really tough. We're away from families and things, and everyone's a bit short right now, but, let's kind of just sit back and go, look, 90% of guys in the team never been in the semi-final before. Let's really kind of take this both hands. But, we were able to get a couple of days away, come back as a team, and, we really enjoyed it. We almost got there in the end. We just lost to the Sharks, but then we flew back, and it was from there I got a call that I needed to go back, and I needed to go into the sevens. I never played sevens. I never kind of played through the club or age grades. Didn't really like it, to be honest. But the competitions that I did play, I'd try and make a break, and instead of going the whole way, I'd offload it to someone else, to a speedster who would finish off and just wait back at the kickoff line. So I never really liked it. It just wasn't for me. And so obviously getting called into that squad, I was quite nervous, to be honest, because I don't think I was at that condition of a sevens player. Like, those guys are ridiculously fit and fast. So my season that had just finished had now extended into the sevens, which had taken another month or so. And by the time that had finished, I was back into the domestic pre-season.
Just non-stop.
So it was just non-stop there. It was non-stop for that year, 2007, and then rolling in, and then the Super Rugby season rolls into the early parts of 2008. And then obviously when that finished up, I went straight back into the domestic competition. And at that time as well, we had a massive exodus of players. So some of my best mates, some of the guys I'd grown up since I was a kid, had all kind of gone overseas. And so I was obviously there really on my own, I think, at the time. But by the time that season had finished, I was just really I had really bad chronic knee pain, and was just trying to get through the season there. But I just was, as that season progressed onwards, I was just kind of, I was getting to a place where I just wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't thinking thinking straight, really. And it got to a point where, and I've mentioned it before, that I was on the bus on the way to Eden Park, and all I could think about, and I was sitting at the back of the, usually when you're on the bus, they had these, traditionally you had your younger guys at the front, and then the more games you played, you're at the back.
Yep.
And it must have been the last 2 or 3 games, and I was at the back, and I was at the back by myself. It was like, geez, I finally made it to the back of the bus. But at the same time, I was there all by myself. I had the whole back row to myself, and then a couple of seats were empty before the next guys who were able to sit at those seats were there. And so kind of found myself sitting here all alone. Like, I guess I was just a bit lost in my thoughts as to, like, I think I was thinking of things around, like, what am I doing here still? I should be somewhere else, or I should have progressed in my rugby career. I should be, doing much better. And I just remember thinking, I just can't wait to be in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. You know, when you get to the last 2 or 3 minutes and you either won it or you haven't, but you you tend to just enjoy a little bit more and just kind of run out the game.
Yeah.
That's all I could think about. But then I kind of found that that's what I was thinking about. Actually, I was thinking about that for quite a few games leading up. And that's when I was just like, man, if I'm thinking like this is just not fair on the team. I can't be doing that, you know. So I guess after that game, we just lost, you know, and just got into this mentality where we were losing a lot. You know, I wasn't used to it. I'd kind of come through a career where from school all the way through the age grades, all the way through to pro level, I was used to winning. I never really kind of experienced losing much. And, you know, we'd had a disastrous year. I'd captained that year as well. But like, it's just,
so that's an added pressure as well when you're the captain.
Of course, you know, but it was the greatest. Yeah, but it was like the greatest honor of my life to be able to captain Auckland, to be able to run out to Eden Park as a captain. You know, dream come true.
Should have been the best time of your career, in your life.
Yeah, and although I still, you know, I took those moments in when I was running out. I knew where I was. You know, obviously the toll of the season had kind of, you know, paid its price, and so I was in that place. I couldn't really figure out why I was thinking that way, but I knew that I just had to get away from it. I had to get away from that environment. And I think, you know, and I know that with my knee at the time, I knew I had to get it cleaned up. I knew there were things flying around my knee, and that had been a knee that had been like that since I was in the 8th grade as well. So it was just compiling, and I thought, I need to take a break and I need to get this right. I thought that's what I needed to get right. I thought that my knee was what I needed to get right. But the moment I called, I can't remember what I called, but I made myself unavailable for selection for Super Rugby. The moment I did that, though, oh geez, I felt a huge weight off my shoulders just disappear. I just felt I had more energy during the day, during that whole day, to go out and just get out and about. And I'd never been so happy in a long time, which felt like a long time, I guess, but maybe it was just that year. But I just couldn't figure out why, you know. So, and I just loved it, and I thought, oh man, I'm going to stay in this place as long as I can. And I thought I would just take that Super Rugby season off, and I'd come back. You know, I thought, you know, I'd take a break. You know, I was okay enough to just keep my foot in the game, get back to full strength, and then, you know, try it out for the Auckland side the next season. So, but that just kind of, you know, that season had come and gone, and I just was like, you know, I kind of blew it off. Like, you know, I know I have to start training now, but I was like, I can't be asked really. I just love right now that I don't have to get up and have to, you know, get to the gym, or have to beat the street, or I have to, you know, eat this, or, you know, like I was really bad nutritionally, you know, so I was a yo-yo weight person, which a lot of us Pacific Islanders are, you know. We can chuck on 3 kilos and then drop it like that in the space of a few days. So I was really bad at my nutrition, but obviously I'd just blown out once I wasn't playing anymore. And I just shot right up. I went from 97 kilos all the way up to 121 in the space of about 3 months after my last game. Mind you, it was Christmas and New Year's, and we tend to go really big.
That's an alright excuse.
Yeah. So I just was like, I was in this state, and I couldn't figure it out. And I realized, like, I hadn't even spoken about those thoughts. I hadn't spoken to anyone about it, not even my family, you know. And I kind of actually isolated myself from them. Like, not on purpose. You know, it was unknowingly I was doing it. I didn't know that, but like, I just didn't want to talk about rugby, you know. You know, even though they were asking what's going on, I just was like, it wasn't something I wanted to kind of go down. And my wife, who was my partner at the time, she was starting to see a decline in me. Like, I just wasn't motivated to do anything. You know, I was just stuck. You know, I stayed in our outhouse in our family home there, and I just never came out of it. I just was in bed the whole time. I'd come out to probably go to the loo and go back inside, you know, and then I'd go up the road to get some takeaways, come back home. That was my day, you know. And I just thought, wow, this is cool, you know. I was still thinking this is fun, and I actually enjoy this. but I didn't really know. I was kind of just, just unmotivated. I was, and I didn't actually know that I was in a really, really bad way. But I ended up, making some really bad decisions. I ended up with the wrong crowd. I ended up meeting some people that just kind of, wasn't good for me. And kind of was always looking at the bottom of a barrel every single Friday, Saturday. I kind of felt weird that on a Friday or Saturday that I wasn't drinking, that I wasn't doing anything. It felt wrong, like I should be taking advantage of the weekend, kind of thing. And that was my thought process at the time. And it wasn't until, and that was all through. So that was the end of 2008, all the way towards the end of 2009. And I just at the time, there was a cyclone over in Samoa, in the islands, and they were running a fundraiser. I was actually trying to stay in shape because I couldn't actually fit any more clothes. So I tried to stay in shape, and I ended up at Les Mills at the gym there, just in the city. And my neighbor there, Marty Stanley, who was one of the Stanley boys who played during the days, he was a PT there at the time. So he would get me in there, and I'd do PT work, and we'd just be boxing and doing all sorts of things. But it was just a good place for me to go and kind of confide in someone, to talk to someone, because I was close with Marty, and just kind of just chat about anything, and it was there where, the cyclone happened, unfortunately, in Samoa, and he came up with this idea. They're like, shucks, we should actually make up a game, an old boys game, where we bring all the, ex players of Pacific Island descent, and play against a New Zealand team. And I just thought, oh, whatever, uncle. Like, I call him uncle, and I said, whatever, uncle, you're not going to do that, mate. I really didn't think he'd do it. And within a week, I'd seen an email, and it had all these legends of the game, all these All Black legends that I had watched as a kid, all of them on the email. And along with that, you had a couple of guys from soccer as well, from football. You had some of the All Whites guys and some of the Black Caps boys, all on this email, saying, look, we're looking to sort out a game to raise money for the tsunami. And within a week, we were all together as a group, and I was just like, wow, this is cool, man. Some of the legends of sport, New Zealand sport, were all here down on the field. And we did this promo midweek, right with the Auckland team at the time. And so obviously I'd gone back down there, and that was the very first time I'd seen all the boys, all my teammates, in that last 12 to 18 months at the time. So I was obviously just reconnecting with them again, and it was just great to be around them, and it was just great to be in the environment. We did a little promo, we were playing touch with the senior players, with the pro players at the time. That was done and dusted, and then everyone had left, but I just stayed on, just watched the trainings, tried to help out at training as much as I could, but I was just way out of shape and couldn't really keep up with the play. But it was just, I got into the changing rooms with the guys and sat around them, and I think it was Ali Williams, who was one of the stalwarts at Auckland at the time. He was the only one that was really brutally honest with me. Kind of sat, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing, mate." He goes, "What are you doing with yourself?" I said, "Nothing, man. I'm just enjoying life." And he said, "Look, man," "you can." Said something along the lines of, "Look, you can do whatever you're doing when you finish, but you won't be able to play rugby. If there comes a time when you want to go, oh, I feel like playing, that time's going to come and go. So you need to switch on. You need to switch on right now." It was really good to hear that from someone, and he's kind of really he's a character who's quite straight down the arrow there. So I needed to hear that, and I kind of and after that day, I was like, geez, what the hell am I doing? I'm bloody throwing this dream away. I've forgotten why I enjoyed playing the game. It was all those other times. It wasn't even actually playing rugby. It was just being around the boys. So I kind of made a conscious decision then that I was going to go back. So I just had to start shedding the weight. I told the coach at the time, Mark Ainscombe, I said, "Look, I'm keen to come back next season. I'm going to really work my ass off now." And that was it. I just got myself into a bit better shape and played a bit of club rugby at Ponsonby, and then made myself available and was able to make selection to the Auckland side moving forward. And that was it. I was back in 18, almost 2 years later. I was back playing pro rugby, and I loved it. It was great to be back. But I started to find even within that year, it started to decline towards the end of that year again. I started having those feelings again. Couldn't figure it out why. And it wasn't until something my brother said to me, and he told me this, within the first couple of years of my pro career, where he started to see it started to just kind of go stale. And he said, you need to get out of Auckland. You need to get out of this environment. You need to go somewhere different and reinvent yourself, reinvigorate your career. So, he brought that up again. And so I just decided, okay, I'm just going to, there's no point in me kind of getting to this place again. You need to try anything you can, So I decided I went down. That was the very next season. I went down to Dunedin. I went down to Otago. And it was funny because it was another dream of mine to go down to Otago. While I was at high school, one of my cousins was down there as a uni student. He was down there with some of the biggest characters in New Zealand rugby down there, Mark Ellis and Jamie Joseph and all these guys. And always dreamt of kind of being that Scarfy life. I'm not sure if you saw that when you were down there, but you see all the unis. That's where you go to escape your parents after you finish high school. You go down to Dunedin, you get as far away as possible.
Yeah, it was lively. I remember it was all going off there.
It's crazy, right? So I thought, oh man. So a couple of us in our last year at high school, I was really close mates. We were like, when we finish, let's all go to Dunedin. And we made a pact that we were going to do it. But then obviously I got called into the Auckland Academy and with a couple of other players, and a couple of other players ended up getting accepted into another university. And only one of our guys who we thought would never ever leave home, a Tongan boy, ended up going down. He spent a good 10 years down there, and he just ended up playing pro rugby as well. So for me it was like, it's an opportunity to kind of live out a little dream there and spend 8 months down in Dunedin and kind of get amongst it all and enjoy the rugby. So, and it was one of the best seasons I played. In terms of rugby, obviously I didn't go as well as I'd expected, but I was just in really good shape. I was in a really good headspace. I was enjoying myself. I was just at the time, because my wife, my girlfriend, she was my partner at the time, we'd just been engaged as well. And so I was, she was still at home with our daughter, and I was like, I was obviously missing them, and that was the first time being away from them. And it's just then when I realized, like, oh, I can't do this again. This can't happen. Got to be together. So I just, I got to that place where I was like, geez, I should have done this a long time ago. Probably should have kind of got out of my shell a little bit more, and got out of my comfort zone a bit more. And so from then onwards, I decided, okay, because I always wanted to as well. So all this travel that I had done as a kid, and then seeing one of my cousins up in Italy who was, playing up there. He played he played in England as well, and he ended up in Italy. Seeing him up there around his mates and just the kind of way he was enjoying rugby and life at the same time, it was just like, oh man, I definitely want to play overseas when I finish. And so that was another goal for me that I wanted to do. So after Otago, I decided, oh man, I need to get overseas. I don't really care where, just I need to get out. I want to enjoy. I want to get some worldly experience, and get amongst it. So, and that's when Edinburgh came calling. There was, there was an offer on the table, and I was like, yeah, that's like I've been here before a couple of times. It's a beautiful city, and I know it's cold, but it's going to be an adventure. That's what I knew. And my wife and my daughter hadn't been past Australia at the time, so I knew, like, oh, this just be a great family adventure for us. Like I wanted to. Obviously I was coming towards the end of my career, but I was in really good shape, and I just thought I want to make sure I finish as best I can. If I'm going to finish, I'm probably going to retire overseas somewhere. So I want to contribute wherever I can in the next place that I go to, do as best I can. And what I'd heard about Edinburgh, they were a young club in terms of pro rugby. They had a young team, and they were looking for senior players at the time. And so, I was happy to come up, and that was it. We hauled up and ended up in Edinburgh. But, I was well aware at that time too, since I had come back, from the year and a half away, what I needed to do, what I needed to put in place, and just the lessons that I had learned along the way. And I needed to make sure that other players knew about it. Obviously, I didn't share my story with guys, but I just, would always, pick up on some of the behaviors of guys as I got used to, get used to them. And I kind of found that I was in a place where I was always kind of, putting my arm around guys and checking in on players. And I just started to get a kick out of it as well. I started to feel like I started to feel good about doing something like that, And I guess you get to that point as a senior player where you're kind of just more worried about the guys coming through more so than being yourself and where you're at, it's not like I was trying to shoot for higher honours, it's not like I could play for Scotland or anything. So, I was at that point where it was more so about making sure that those guys were doing the right things off the field, were making better decisions than I did, and making sure that they were, mentally were in safe places to be able to I guess share their thoughts and their struggles and their challenges. And that was it. But I ended up picking up a really bad hip injury, which actually ended my career. It wasn't my knee, it was my hip. I got degeneration in my hip, so basically arthritis. Okay. Played out the season, and that was that. That was pretty much the end. Obviously, it finished a bit more prematurely than I expected, but I just had to, it was another realization. I just had to accept it, and once I accepted it, it was around about halfway through my last season. Once I had accepted it, I was another weight off my shoulder. I actually just started, because I think I was in a place where I was trying to get it right, trying to stay competitive and trying to get back to some good form, but it just wasn't happening. And then once I just kind of let it go, I actually just enjoyed, obviously contributing what I could, but just enjoyed those last kind of 4 or 5 months of, being able to live out my dream as a pro rugby player. And it was just getting around the younger guys. There were just so many young kids at the time who are now, some of these guys are huge international stars here, playing so well, doing so well for themselves and their families, and really being happy to see that progression in them. Keep their feet on the ground really well here in Scotland. So, so for me, that was the end of it. And
what year are we talking? So it would have been about 2000 and
end of 2014 or 2015, I think it was.
But it wasn't the end. It wasn't the end for your time in Scotland, because one, you're still here, and you've went on to do some fantastic things. Tell me a little bit about the Rugby for Life, which is a program that's run for supporting rugby players with their mental health. Tell me a bit about that.
Yep. So, as I said, I was on the verge of going back to New Zealand. It was done and dusted, getting ready to move back home after my playing career. And there was a job on offer at the union where it was a relocation officer role. So it was relocating foreign players into Edinburgh and Glasgow, the two pro clubs here. And I just thought, well, when I looked at the description, it's the first time I kind of looked at a job description, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. And obviously, I was looking at it, and there weren't boxes that I couldn't tick, but there were boxes there that I thought were really important that would get me over the line, and that was someone who had experience in pro level rugby, someone who had experience in relocation, which I'd obviously had firsthand. And in all these kind of boxes that kind of ticked off for me, and I thought, look, I'd be really keen to do this, and because it was really tough moving over. I didn't really realize at the time. For me, it was okay, but for my family, it was really, this cultural shock to them. But also just that whole relocation process, resettling into a new country, into a new place, can be quite tough. And especially for a lot of Pacific Islanders that come here as well. It's some of them coming straight from the islands now, straight here. So it's a big shock to the system. So I was really fortunate. Again, they applied for the job and it was in. I got it, and and it was the start of a new kind of career. You know, it was just, I guess it was just an avenue or another kind of vehicle to trying to make sure that I was doing something that I enjoyed or finding something that I enjoyed. And I loved it. You know, it was just, I was able to kind of help families, help players and their families move over, settle in to the environment, make sure that I could put them in the best place to give them the best chance to put their best foot forward, so that that player could go off knowing that his wife and kids are happy and safe.
Yep.
You know, kind of take that away from them when they turn up to training, and you get the best out of them. So really enjoyed that role, and that role started to evolve into, you know, support off the field around development, and like coming through the New Zealand system. You know, they have a really good development program back in New Zealand that's just evolved over the last 20 odd years. And so just started to apply some of those things that I had learned on the way. And at the same time, the HR department at Scottish Rugby, we're looking to put together a player support program. So I got a phone call from them to head upstairs and have a chat. And just so happened that we were both thinking the same things about what's needed, what we think is needed, what you know, and thinking about duty of care to the players. You know, how can we support them? You know, not, you know, around the mental well-being space. And I guess coming through New Zealand, I knew how big that space is. It's not just about making sure that their mental health is good. Doing that, you need to cover off a lot of other areas in their lives that make them feel safe, that make them feel, you know, secure. And so those areas are everything basically outside of rugby. You know, so it's their personal development. It's their you know, making sure that they are looking at for interests outside of rugby, that they're proactively doing that. It's making sure that they are, you know, looking at gaining qualifications while they're playing in whatever interest that they have. So we look at all those areas around their educational pathways and career pathways to their financial management. You know, the guys are coming into big numbers from high school sometimes, you know, they're recruiting very young now. So it's just helping them deal with, you know, some of these overwhelming numbers that they're having to deal with, and making sure that we're bringing in people that can help, you know, professionals that can help support them in those areas, help them to learn as they go. You know, it's really important for these guys to learn, to be able to become more self-sufficient, be able to deal with things on their, you know, on their own. And so we look at all those kind of areas and around the mental well-being space. And so the program is designed to support players at different levels, different stages and ages of their careers. So, you know, you have your young guys, so you're making sure that you're providing support around their professional development, you know, around their nutrition and all sorts of things, to, you know, the expectations, you know, them versus, you know, what is real around pro rugby. To, you know, your guys around that middle tier of your career. That's when things can just get to, let's just jump on the PlayStation and Xbox and just wait for training each day, to, you know, the guys that are at the very end, towards the end of their career, and just making sure that we, you know, we can provide support around transitioning out of the game, you know, which is an area that we're currently kind of building towards at the moment. That we launched back in March of 2018, and we've put a lot of emphasis around that middle tier, and making sure that we want it to look a bit different for pro rugby players that come into the environment, to see that it's not all just about rugby. You know, these guys are doing things off the field. These guys are ticking boxes and actioning plans while they're playing. That's all part of being a professional rugby player. We want our young guys to see that, so when they come in, they follow suit. You know, that's really where we're at the moment. But we're still very young in this program, and, you know, there's a lot of trial and error around what we're doing. But, you know, we're starting to get good engagement from the player group. Not all players need support, and we understand that. But at the same time, you know, you never know. You know, and that's something that I've started learning as I've, you know, this is obviously something that's new to me. I've never done this before. I don't have any experience in it, besides, you know, experience on the other side. But, you know, I've had to learn things, you know, around everything from, you know, managing a program to, you know, to being able to organize initiatives and, you know, speak to people outside of rugby, you know, to get next to, you know, businesses and corporations, there's all sorts, and kind of look at ways to find ways to build these initiatives to support our players. So it's like as I said, like the engagement from the players is now slowly starting to increase, and they're starting to see where the benefits come in engaging with the program. But what's really been comforting is seeing guys actually actioning things themselves, taking it upon themselves to now start moving, which wasn't really happening until we had launched the program. So it's really good to see that we're starting to see that cultural shift in the way that guys look at, life after rugby or life beyond the game, but also around the mental health stigma, around that stigma, around that mental well-being space. That cultural shift to realize now they're like, look, it's, it is an emotional roller coaster ride going through pro sport, not just pro rugby, but any sport. Injuries, non-selections. There's always going to be dramas. There's always going to be politics here and there. Different coaches, different things that you can't control. And so it's just important to realize that, like, hey, it's okay to go through those emotions and let those emotions out. The worst thing you can do is leave it in there and not talk to anyone about it. So I guess all I try and do is challenge guys to find that motivation within them, to find that intrinsic motivation to go out there and look for other interests outside of rugby, but also to try and create a safe place for them to be able to share their thoughts, to share their feelings, to be able to to use myself as an avenue that they can offload anything that they're going through, not just myself, but others, within the environment as well. And just making sure that we can have, I guess, those kinds of services readily available for them, just the same way that injuries and physical, rehab are available.
Everything, injury, all doctors, whatever. Yeah. It's fascinating to listen to. What I really like about the initiative in particular is the fact that it's not just about supporting young guys. It's not just about supporting, the middle, and it's equal importance on guys coming towards the end of their career, because that's a really tough time. You will have faced it where you've gone into the real world, and I think it's great that you're giving that support, because let's be honest, 20 years ago, these things weren't around. It was unheard of, and especially a sport like rugby. It might be tough. You're not meant to show any emotions. You're not meant to, so this is something that you're kind of trying. It takes time. It sounds brilliant.
Trying to get around that mental health space, that stigma, this is quite hard in any sport. But looking at rugby, it's a male-dominated sport. Like you said, it's physical. You have to be tough. You have to be, you have to be hard-headed. You have to be able to take it on the chin. You have to be, and then physically, you have to be that person as well. And if you're not, the other person's going to have it on top of you. So it's a highly competitive environment. You mix all that together, and you got an environment where guys don't want to tell anyone about their emotions or their feelings or share those things. Little do they know little do they know that actually sharing those feelings or just talking about it and getting it out of your system is actually better for you. We're still trying to get to that phase. We're still trying to kind of promote that as much as we can. They're like, the more you share, it's that old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. And the weight that comes off your shoulder. You're starting to see articles now of athletes who have really struggled, right across the whole pro sport, in different sports where there's similar struggles. I just read the other day, a kid had to retire as a pro gamer because he had some sort of injury on his hand. So 25 years old, pro gamer, unexpectedly has a career-ending injury, and he's gutted. Obviously, he's gutted, but he's talking about what he needs to do now. What is he going to do now? Now that you've not a pro gamer, who are you? What do you like? What type of pro? Who are you really? Now that you're not this person, the pro gamer, who are you? And that's a tough question for athletes to answer, because the moment you're in that environment, you immerse yourself in it, you stay in it, and you don't tend to kind of, everything seems a little bit different after. If you're not as grounded, or you don't have the right people around you to support you, to help you keep your feet on the ground, it's very easy to just get sucked into that bubble, that pro rugby bubble, that schedule, which becomes your life, which what you think is your life. You think, this is my life, this is who I am, and you think about performance, and you think about, like, if you have a bad game and you kind of wear it the whole week, you're down the whole week. You're trying to get yourself back up, but you're now your day off, you don't feel like doing anything, or you don't, all you can think about is
people around you get the backlash of it because you're just grumpy, and
that's all you can think about.
You're under pressure to bounce back to perform the following week.
So when that's all you're kind of doing throughout every single week, it's pretty easy to determine that that's how you identify yourself. Once you can understand that, like, okay, that's just, rugby's what I do, it's not who I am. And once you can realize that, then you know that, like, okay, come day off, like, I need to go about, do my errands, and there's also, I guess, I don't know, whatever, if there's another interest, or I don't know, it could be anything. It can be the
family time, going to the park, getting out for a walk, going and seeing some
making coffee, like a lot of these guys like to brew coffee, so making sure that they're looking to do other things like building a business, or upskilling themselves. Like, I'm really trying to push that message right now to the players about the importance of upskilling yourself. A lot of guys feel pressure to gain qualifications straight away. I need qualifications so that I can go and do something. I say, well, it's not just qualifications that you need. Employers are always going to ask about experience. And the thing is that you do have transferable skills, a lot of experience in the transferable skills that are needed to go into any job. Work ethic, and communication skills. That's being a team member, being part of a team. Achieving goals, goal setting, all those things you guys know how to do down pat. Even receiving feedback and constructive feedback, and being able to be accountable. You can't hide on that field now. You can't hide on the footage there. So you're going to be accountable. So you can take those things with you. But the thing is that what guys don't realize is that pro rugby anyway, but most people who come into pro sport usually coming out of school now. You're coming really young out of school. So your first career is something that you were already doing for free because you loved it, you enjoyed it. And it's something you're still going to do when you finish, because you're still going to turn up on Tuesday and Thursday at your local club and play social rugby. Why? Because you love it. Right? So you've gone into a career, high-paying career, that you're doing because you love it. The last thing you want to do is be forced into another career that you don't like because you don't have any options, because you didn't give yourself any options. You didn't invest time in yourself during your career, those parts of the week that you do have off, and all of our players have realized that, like, I do have time to do other things. We are busy. We are all busy in our lives, our playing careers and our personal lives, but there is time. There's time if you commit to it. There's time if you prioritize it. If you really want to transition smoothly and successfully out of the game, then you'll invest time into it. If you really want to be good at that video game, you'll invest time into it. You'll be able to give up your lunch break because you want to sit there and keep going. Like, you're willing to sacrifice something there to make that work, to be good at it. So you got to look at your development and your eventual transition out of the game in the same way. You've got to invest time into it. There's no lucky person who's just going to realize who you are and help you, get you on your feet. There might be one or two stories, but how many of those stories have you seen work? Sure. So, it's just bringing that reality to them, and making sure that they have the right tools to be able to make that transition out of the game. And so we look at areas to invest in, and those kind of opportunities where they're working on their development, working on their self-development in those areas around career education, financial management, their mental well-being, all those areas, that whole kind of that full service kind of thing outside of their professional development as rugby players. I try and move away from that word players or pro players. Sometimes I try and look at them as people who play rugby, people who get paid to play rugby, rather than rugby players. So it's just trying to put that little perspective and give players that perspective that you're not a pro rugby player. You're a person that gets paid to play rugby. That's it. But you're a person first. You're human first. So when you get criticism, yes, it's okay to be angry about it. Okay, don't try and just like park it like it's nothing if it's still grinding you and living rent free in your head for the whole week. Like, get it out.
Yep.
You be angry about it. It's fine. It's okay to be angry about it. It's okay to be upset about it. But it's not normal to kind of keep it within you. It's not good. Like, physically, it's not good for you as well. Not just mentally, but physically, what it does to your body. And it's just kind of educating the players in this space, so that they're able to make better decisions. It's making informed decisions throughout their careers, but it's making sure that they're informed first and not relying on everyone else to do something for them. It's not, obviously you have your agents, etc., but you don't want to be relying on them to do everything in your personal life.
Yep.
You want to learn as you go. So when I was relocating players over, it was about educating them. It was about showing them how to do things and then leaving them to do it, and not being the person to help them pay their bills every month or help them, change over their broadband stuff or things like that. It's like this is how you do it. Here's the information. If you do need a little bit of help or you're stuck on something, let me know. But I want to try and give that over to them. Like, you handle that. You don't need your agent to help you do that. You can do that. Like, it'll work. And if you need to cover it off with me, cool. Give me a call and we'll cover that off. But it's just trying to teach them. It's more of a learning curve for them and not a service that you want to provide for them. You don't want to spoon feed these guys. In the end, it's about that's their self-development there. That's becoming self-sufficient. That's being able to rely on yourself. Because if you do that, the self-confidence that builds, that goes onto the field. Being able to make better decisions, being able to make decisions and be accountable for them. Because I can own that because I'm a bit more self-sufficient, I'm a bit more sure of myself. And if I make mistakes, I know that's a mistake, but I'll grow and I'll learn. So it all comes together. It's all relatable to performance. But I believe that if they can get that part right off the field, it takes them a long way off the field, on the field as well. They gain more around their performance on the field as well. So, we're, like I said, it's a bit difficult at the moment. Obviously with lockdown, we're restricted. So I'm just trying to shift the whole program online so that the players can access all of our resources and support moving forward. For now, all I'm doing is just kind of checking in on them every now and then. Just going through the list and calling up all the players, probably annoying them sometimes, and I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I doubt myself because I know I've been that guy on the other line. I'm like, geez, what does he want? And out of courtesy, you guys are picking up the phone. I totally understand that. But again, I need to realize, and I think that's a lesson for all of us, is that no one knows what someone else is going through.
Absolutely.
You never know what a phone call will make, and sometimes I'll get a text or, at the end of the phone call, guys are like, oh man, thanks for calling. Appreciate your call. And some guys will call back the next week or they'll send a text message, so you got to get a gauge of like where they're at, that they're keen to kind of have a chat, so never kind of just miss a guy. I'm like, nah, get through everyone. Hey, if you're annoying, you're annoying. That's fine. Yeah. I can live with that. But what I can't live with is that if I just...
Every fourth or fifth call could be a very important call. You might get 2 or 3 people that are a bit busy and thinking, oh, Ben, I like Ben, but maybe I'll rather speak to you later.
Totally get it. Absolutely.
Sorry.
I just remember telling myself and speaking to one of the players before I came into this role, it was like, look, man, there's so much now that I know about, not just as a pro rugby player and the career that I've had, but also personally about myself, some things that I've realized in my career, why I took that break, and there was, when I look back now, I'm like, geez, I almost know exactly why I walked away from the game. and it was hard to admit it. But as soon as I did, it was easy to move forward and easy to tell that story again to players, you know. And for me, a lot of it was that I wasn't where I wanted to be in that point in my career. Even though I'd had a very successful time on the way up, I just wasn't happy where I was at that time. And I let that eat me. I wasn't happy because other guys, my other teammates, were going past me. And I'd been a guy that had kind of always been at the top there. So seeing others go past me, I couldn't handle that, you know. Wasn't jealous of them. I was always happy for the brothers, but I just wasn't happy that I wasn't there too.
Yeah.
So that was digging at me, you know. So, but having to realize that and to admit that, that was hard, you know. But once I did, I thought, man, if I had just admitted it then, geez, I would have gone back to work.
Could have
gone back to work. All these kinds of things, all these kinds of lessons.
Back on the road.
All these kinds of lessons, you know. I was telling someone, I said, man, if I go back to New Zealand, knowing what I know, and I don't tell these guys, man, I couldn't sleep on that, you know, because they need to know. Because if they don't, and the same cycle keeps continuing, geez, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, you know. So I just knew, like, no, I need to keep telling the story, and I need to keep providing the support as long as I can, as long as they want me here at the union, you know. So because, you know, and I've kind of found that that's my purpose. That's where I want to be. I want to be supporting these guys, and like I said, when I came back to play, that's a role that I was just subconsciously doing.
Yeah. I
didn't realize it. My wife actually showed me an article from back in 2010 where I actually had quoted all that I'm back here to support the players, to help them, you know, with what's going on outside of rugby. I don't even remember quoting it. I don't even remember the article, but she's like, geez, look at this. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I guess this is where I'm supposed to be.
You've been listening to you from the start of your career to where you've got to. You've evolved as a person significantly. I mean, you look at that guy that had the 18 months out of the game, life spiraling out of control, you know, struggling. You bounce back, and I love the way you want to give back now. I think your role at SRU is a fantastic role. I think it's extremely important. Yes, I'd imagine there's a few times you're chasing after people, then having to do that, and they're maybe not, but it's still important that those people know if they ever do require it, the support is there, and they do have somebody to talk to who's been through life experiences. And I think it's been fascinating to chat to you today. It's been I think you've had a great upbringing, great career. I think I wish you all the very best with the work you're doing over here in Scotland. Hopefully, when all this madness passes, maybe we could have a coffee or something.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it'd be good to meet you. But thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's great to talk. Cheers.
Yes.